The Oscars are a few days away right now, and the nominees for the top prize are La La Land, Moonlight, Lion, Manchester by the Sea, Hidden Figures, Arrival, Hacksaw Ridge, Fences, and Hell or High Water. Since La La Land and Moonlight are the two that are going at it in other awards ceremonies for the top prizes, I think those are the two to really look out for to see who's going to win. As is usual with the Oscars, though, you can usually find better movies in subcategories that didn't even make it into the Best Picture nominee. For instance, Viggo Mortensen is nominated for Best Actor for Captain Fantastic. I think that should definitely replace Hacksaw Ridge's spot for Best Picture. A movie like Fences, it's absolutely incredible. However, I think Kubo and the Two Strings is much more impressive and should definitely take its spot in the nominee for Best Picture. However, if we're going to talk about the movies that should be nominated for Best Movie, then we're going to have to go down to the Best Documentary category for most of the injustices. I'm fairly certain that in the documentary category, the 13th is going to be the movie that ends up taking it. All of the documentaries successfully challenge preconceived notions while still representing both sides, but doing it in a way that makes you feel like it's not really doing that, while still being able to be entertaining. If you're going to choose a movie that should be brought up into the Best Movie category of the year, I don't think that the 13th fits the bill. I do think there is one film that really stands out among all the other documentaries, and I would even say among all the other movies that are nominated, and that would be Fire at Sea, directed by Gianfranco Rosi. It is a documentary about the European migrant crisis. It won the Golden Bear at the 66th Berlin International Film Festival last year. Now, Fire at Sea, it is about the European migrant crisis, but not very much at the forefront of the story. Most of it takes place on an island in the Mediterranean Sea called Lampedusa. You do actually have lots of characters that you follow throughout the story. For instance, there's a young boy who lives on the island. I don't think he's any more than 12 years old, and you kind of just see him throughout his day interacting with other children. He'll make a slingshot and he'll go out and he'll practice with the slingshot. He starts to realize that he is losing eyesight in one of his eyes, and you kind of see his story intertwined with others on the island. A radio DJ regularly who will put on music. He puts on one song in particular that has the lyric Fire at Sea in it. You see a woman who regularly prepares the fish that the men will bring home, and you hear her listening to the DJ on the radio. And on a regular basis, they actually have reports of other migrants who are trying to get onto the mainland but are not able to, and many of them end up sinking. They weren't able to get footage of any of this happening, but all you have is the radio from the communication towers trying to talk to them. That's one of the saddest points whenever they're just going into the dark. All you hear is audio of the ships. It's a very strange documentary, and in fact, it's strange because it doesn't feel anything like a documentary. It's completely content to just leave its camera in the corner of the room. There's almost no interviews, almost as if that's something that most documentaries can't be content to do nowadays. They have to constantly be going in, talking to people, trying to get an opinion, but this one, it just stays behind a glass wall, watching everything that happens. In fact, there's one interview throughout the entire thing, and that's with one of the doctors, just whenever he explains the number of people that are constantly coming in, and the way that you have a boat that might be meant for 300, but you have almost 1,000 people on it, paying almost $1,000 a head, with about 40 to 50 of them dying. Almost none of the film is handheld. Rossi seems to have a very strange way of being able to be right where he needs to be every time something is happening, and capturing it in a way so that you're actually seeing things take place that are staged, like you're watching a fictional narrative take place when really you're just watching people's everyday lives. He talks about this process of being able to put the camera in certain places so that you actually watch people doing mundane things, but capturing it in a way so that people feel like they're watching a fictitious film, something that isn't a documentary. The approach feels very much like the documentary that came out a few years ago, Leviathan, about the fishers, but without that whole surrealist, magical quality going on. The end product, though, feels very much like a film by Michael Haneke, like The White Ribbon or Cachet or Amour. Fire at Sea does surpass the other documentaries, and it surpasses them when it comes to the form. Something that's so confident in what it's doing that it doesn't need to convince you through elaborate camera movements or people actually talking to the camera. Even though there's nothing graphic to be seen, it results in a much more painful film. Fire at Sea should win Best Documentary. And I would say that all of the other documentaries that are nominated, they do achieve the base goal that all these documentaries have to in order to at least be nominated. That is that they put forward an argument and they successfully challenge everybody's conceptions while still being able to adequately represent the other side. Because it takes a silent approach, because it sits in the corner and watches things as they unfold and kind of asks you to empathize instead of kind of forcing its empathy on you, the statement it makes in comparison to is much broader, it's much more painful, and it's much clearer. And that's because it never verbalizes its statement. It takes the idea of a documentary and it messes with it so that it can become closer to something new, something that we don't think of when we think of documentary. And Fire at Sea is the one out of all the documentaries that's doing that. That's why it needs to be the best documentary. And this is why I would like to say that O.J. Made in America is very, very, very close, because the amount of classic, clear-cut storytelling that goes into it, while it is 7.5 hours long, it's done with such flawless precision that I would say that movie should definitely be nominated for Best Picture. I would say that Fire at Sea should win Best Picture, and I would ask you to consider this in its defense. These awards are meant for the film not that entertains us, but that challenges us in the most entertaining way possible. I would just argue that Fire at Sea does that best. But hey, who knows, maybe Passengers should win.